Hey folks, this is Dave Schneider from the Worker Power Hour,
And this is Dustin Ponder.
and we're coming at you with another Quick Strike video. Folks, we have been off the air for a couple of weeks now here. We've had some very exciting news in our UPS contract battle that's going on. In the past month, we now have a strike authorization vote taking place. Teamsters across the country are getting their ballots in the mail to be able to vote to get a credible strike threat at the table. We urge any Teamster UPS listeners out there to make sure that they vote yes before the June 3rd deadline. This is one of the most important aspects to winning a good contract in the next couple of months when our agreement with UPS expires. But we're going to have a new podcast episode where we do a deep dive on the strike, this strike authorization vote, and how things are going on with UPS in the next week. Today, though, we had some very important, groundbreaking news happen in our union. Dustin, tell us what it is.
Yeah, some may say it's a bombshell, but we felt we had to put this video out because huge news came out about the reform movement and the Teamsters. Teamsters United, Fred Zuckerman and Sean O'Brien announced today that they are going to be running for office in 2021. The hot topic of discussion actually is that Sean O'Brien's going to be running as the top of the ticket in that reform slate. So we've had a lot of discussion online, a lot of different people, talking about what this means, because Sean O'Brien ran with Hoffa last time. So you have some of the reformers, the militants are concerned, Us on this podcast, we are huge fans of Fred Zuckerman. We've talked to him. We know him very well. We know what he's all about. So a lot of guys have been asking Dave and I, what do you guys think about this? What are we to make of Sean O'Brien running on the top ticket? So we decided we'd make a quick video to kind of explain some of the key points we think that militants and reformers should think about when they're contemplating this huge news. So, one of the big things that Dave and I wanted to talk about, the first point that we wanted to sort of get out there, is that we're going to support any union leader that supports fighting against the bosses, the 1%, any leader that supports reviving the strike weapon, organizing the unorganized in our core industries, and protecting our pensions. It doesn't matter who you are, That is a key point and philosophy that we've had in Teamsters United for a while.
It is, and Dustin, on that point, this is really important for folks who were involved in the 2016 Teamsters United campaign to realize is that what we did in that campaign is that we brought together a lot of different Teamsters, but it wasn't just kick the bums out of office. We brought people together around a militant platform, something that represents a departure from the way that Hoffa, the way that Ken Hall, who's his secretary-treasurer, conduct unionism, and the way that they do bargaining and negotiations, and frankly, the way that they view each and every one of us in the 1.4 million Teamsters Union, which is to say that the Teamsters United platform was one dedicated to fighting employers, to resisting any kind of concessions that were offered to us at the table and demanding better, of reviving the strike weapon and going into contract battles with a credible strike threat. It was a platform dedicated to organizing new Teamsters in core industries, like in trucking, in warehousing, in freight, and then especially with an eye towards Amazon, this giant monopoly monstrosity that is basically taking over a giant part of the U.S. economy and employing a mostly non-union workforce. We think that organizing the unorganized is going to be essential for our future long term as a union. But the other aspect is that the Teamsters United platform was dedicated to protecting people's pensions. And right now in the U.S. we're gearing up for a major pension crisis with Teamsters across the country who are facing serious cuts that are going to get handed down by the Treasury Department if we can't figure something out. Teamsters United and Fred Zuckerman brought together a group of people united around this platform that projects an idea of militant unionism. It's the type of thing that we badly need, and frankly, Teamsters across the country who were involved in the election have taken that platform and made it their own locally. I know in Jacksonville we have our own Teamsters United chapter here. We ran some shop stewards that were centered around these this militant platform as applied to our local union. So I think, Dustin, the point you made is well received, which is to say that we should be ready and able to support any leaders who are going to take up this platform fully and commit to implementing it if they're elected head of our union.
Yeah, And don't get me wrong, I've had my own battles with officers, union officers who are deeply entrenched in the business union philosophy. But I think our militants out there have to understand, what we're talking about here is two different philosophies of trade unionism. Teamsters United is built on a premise of supporting militant organizing model of trade unionism compared to business unionism, which is collaborating with the bosses. It's basically working out a deal, having your local officers and business agents handle everything, not having the members involved, not willing to organize and fight not only internally, but going out and bringing in the working class externally. So these are a set of principles, and I think one of the key things our members need to watch out for, I remember, in 2013, the last election, I was actually in 804 in Tim Sylvester's local at the time that, he actually lost his election, and that's how Zuckerman came up. And a lot of people had the same questions they have now. Is Zuckerman for real? Is Sean O'Brien real? The key question is, are they going to stand up and support this philosophy of militant organizing trade unionism compared to business unionism? And it's our responsibility as militants and activists on the ground to make sure that they live up to those principles that we're actually here in this movement for. So I think that's one of the key takeaways for our folks out there who are trying to digest this information.
I agree. I mean, Teamsters United is a movement, and it goes beyond any one individual leader who's going to head it up. Now, the reality of the fact is, this platform, though, is central to our movement, and it needs to be central to any candidate that wants to head it up and any candidate that wants to challenge Jim Hoffa and any of his lackeys like Ken Hall. So it's our hope here at the Worker Power Hour that Sean O'Brien takes this platform up, makes this central to his campaign, and I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities to do that over the course of the next 3 years, gearing up for the 2021 run. On that point, though, we need to start talking some brass tacks about what this is actually going to look like. And I think the best way to do this is by looking back at what's worked and what hasn't. I will say this, and this is another, I would say, point number 2 for our Teamster militants out there who are watching to take away. What was key to Teamsters United's success was that they had a militant platform and united action. These two elements went hand in hand. We've already talked about the different aspects of that platform, but Dustin, you and I both know when we were going across Florida, all up into Georgia, and talking to folks at UPS, talking to people at different white paper contracts, people who are in freight, or all different work sites, this platform, this philosophy of militant unionism resonates with our members, and it's what they want to see. They don't want to see leadership that's going to continue to sell out to corporate America. They don't want to see us continuing to get brought these concessionary agreements from companies that are making record profits, and then being told, well, we're not really prepared to strike, so you either take it and accept concessions, or good luck on the picket line, we can't really help you.
Yeah.
Which is that is the philosophy of sellout unionism, which Jim Hoffa and his people have embraced wholeheartedly. We brought this platform to Teamsters across the country, and it resonated with them. But the other key to it was that we had united action. And I think if you look back in 2011, during the Teamsters International election, you can see what united action does not look like, where you had two slates that had different platforms that were opposing Jim Hoffa, and you know what happened? They got trounced. They got absolutely trounced in that election, and Jim Hoffa and his people were able to be reelected handily. Because of that re-election, they were able to implement things like the 2013 concessionary UPS agreement. That probably wouldn't have happened if we'd elected better leaders, but unfortunately, we had a split reform movement in the Teamsters, and that really can't happen if we want to see if we want to see a better union that's actually going to fight for us and take up this philosophy of militant unionism.
Yeah, 100%. This is a key thing I recommend. It goes for your local union politics as well. You never want to split the progressive and militant caucus and base. When I was in Local 804 with Tim Sylvester, that slate lost by 70 votes because we had a business agent kind of go rogue. They ran two basically militant slates, and that one took 400 votes. So any other problems that came about during that election, the key factor was that all the militants and progressives didn't stick together and unite around a common platform. And if you look at what's going on in New York City and the Teamster local up there now, it's just a disaster. They put officers in. You know, you got the president taking out his mistress on the union dime. He's about to resign. You know, members are getting walked out left and right. So that was a thing that I learned very early on. Never make an unprincipled split, never make a rush to judgment. We have to do every effort we can to keep the Teamsters, who are militants and fighters, united together and backed by that common platform and principle. Again, it's not about individuals. You know, let's be real. You're going to have union officers all over the country. You have hundreds and hundreds of locals, thousands of officers. We're going to have to bring some of these people over to our position and our philosophy and show them that this is a better way. And as rank and file members, as stewards, as activists who are committed to fighting, we have to be willing to accept these people to come over our position. If we're going to transform this union on a national level, we need to win that battle of ideas, but also be willing to accept people who come over our position. So, I mean, any union leader, you know, in the state of Florida, we would rather the business agents and the local union officers and all these people to say, hey, let's actually build unity that's based on member power, membership involvement, and organizing.
Yeah, and Dustin, you said something a minute ago too that I think is kind of worth remembering, especially for people out there, is you know, Fred Zuckerman was actually the car hall director for the IBT for quite some time, and he was removed in 2012 for opposing contract concessions, standing up for the members, and then, you know, a lot of people think he was retaliated against for running against Hoffa's slate in the 2011 election. But here's the reality of the fact is that, I mean, you see what happened with Zuckerman is that he's removed as car hall director in 2012, and since that time, Zuckerman, you know, came around and supports this philosophy of militant unionism and ran in 2016 at the head of the Teamsters United movement and came within just 6,000 votes of defeating Jim Hoffa. I want people to realize, you know, when Sean O'Brien was package director, which Hoffa appointed him that, you know, at the last year, when he was appointed that, you know, he reached out to Teamsters United. He reached out to Fred Zuckerman and basically tried to incorporate some of the ideas and some of the people into the contract negotiating committee that he was going to head up when they entered into negotiations with UPS. The reality is that cost him his position with Jim Hoffa. Jim Hoffa threw him out because he didn't want anything to do with Zuckerman or the philosophy and the platform behind Teamsters United. And so, yeah, you know what? O'Brien, formerly a Hoffa guy, has come around here. Now, I will say this. I know there's a lot of Teamsters out there who are going to be very skeptical. And I want to just say this. You know, this election is 3 years away. This campaign's a ways away. And if you are skeptical, you know, what I encourage you to do is just kind of watch what happens and see how things unfold. You know, we need to maintain a united reform movement if we want to stop Jim Hoffa because the stakes are quite high. You know, the consent decree that's been put on the Teamsters by the federal government since the 1980s has been essentially lifted. And so, you know, the IBT Constitution, which guarantees one Teamster, one vote, meaning that each and every one of us can vote to elect the international leaders of our union. In theory, Jim Hoffa at this next convention in 2021, he could pull together a group of people and snatch that away. You know, the truth is, not every union in America guarantees the right of its members to elect its international officers directly. That could be taken away. So I think an important thing for Sean, Fred, and anybody else who's going to be running to take into consideration is any Teamster leader that we want to take over our union is going to need to stand firmly behind keeping one Teamster, one vote in the Constitution of the IBT. Yeah. But the flip side of it is, for those of us who are activists and fighters in the Teamsters United movement, we need to realize how high the stakes are in 2021 when we actually do have the next Teamster general election, where if Hoffa were to win, this very well could be the last time that we have one Teamster, one vote. And that's absolutely not what we want. I mean, especially if we want to change our union and implement this platform. But Dustin, why don't we go ahead and talk about the third point here? What do we got?
Yeah, I mean, what we've talked about, and going back to when Zuckerman took over for Tim Sylvester, you know, you had a lot of skeptical Teamsters, myself included. And what we found out was that Zuckerman not only talked the talk, but he walked the walk. It's about action, and that's what we need to really monitor, and we need to hold our leaders accountable, even in the reform movement. And the order of the day, the action that's going on right now, is this strike authorization vote and this UPS contract campaign, UPS freight contract campaign. So, that is the main focus. That's the thing that all Teamsters should have their eye on. And really, if we're going to judge, Hoffa, we're going to judge any of our union leaders, it's how they act and organize around this campaign. Are we going to defeat concessions and get a fair contract for working Teamsters across the country, or are we going to try and do, a crappy sales job like what happened 5 years ago?
Exactly. I think this is the most important thing for people to take away, which is to say, yes, it's big news. It's exciting that, we have 2 candidates who just announced that they're going to be running as top of our ticket in our union, but that is 3 years away. And in those 3 years, there are going to be numerous fights, not least of which is the pension fight that's really been ongoing. But especially right now, the UPS and UPS freight contract battles, that is the main event. That is the center of the ring right now. And I'd encourage people, as they're processing, working through some of this news, I know it's very unexpected for a lot of our Teamsters United sisters and brothers out there who've been involved in the movement, and people have different opinions. We need to stay focused and keep our eye on the ball here, which is to say that our movement is on the offense right now. We have a hell of a lot of momentum. The fact that Dennis Taylor called this strike authorization vote is a damning realization from the UPS Contract Negotiating Committee that there is no appetite amongst our members right now to take a concessionary agreement, and that in all likelihood it would be voted no on overwhelmingly and sent back to the table. That strike authorization vote, which was designed to give leverage, in the end, it's actually going to empower those of us in the reform movement who are fighting for a decent contract, because I just want to put this out there. If the contract comes back and it's overwhelmingly negative, and we vote no on it in large numbers, you can, in theory, if we approve strike authorization in the next week, we can now make the argument that more Teamsters support strike authorization and support actually fighting and winning a good contract and rejecting concessions than do support taking a bad agreement that was brought to us from the table. The reality of the fact is we've got to keep our eye on the ball. The UPS and UPS freight contract battle are going to be decisive for our union moving forward. And I will say this to Sean and Fred, there is a giant opportunity here. Fred's already been kind of out in front leading this movement, but especially for Sean, I think this is an incredible opportunity to be able to get out in front and show exactly how the Teamsters would be different under an O'Brien Zuckerman leadership. And I think there's a chance here where you can convince some of the skeptics and some of the people who remember when Sean was working for Hoffa, maybe wasn't exactly on board with a lot of these ideas. I think this is an opportunity to prove what a new slate can do in 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, today I went and hit the Orlando building with some of our Teamster United brothers. We're still going to be going all over the state talking to Teamsters about this contract. And I think it's a great opportunity for militant unionists to show exactly what a contract, built and supported by member involvement looks like. So I'll be keeping an eye out on Sean and Fred and how they handle organizing, this credible strike threat, and also, possibly a no vote if UPS comes at us with concessions. So keep your eye on that. And in fact, for our loyal listeners out there, we're going to reach out to Sean and we're going to invite him to come on the Worker Power Hour and tell you himself exactly what he thinks about a lot of these issues and maybe answer a lot of the questions you guys have. We'll bring up, we've talked to Fred before on the show, and we gave him the same kind of one-over that, you all are expecting right now from Sean O'Brien. So we're going to see if, Sean, the invite's out there if you want to come on the show. Talk to a lot of Teamsters across the country who really want to hear about your platform and what you're going to bring to the table as the top of the ticket at Teamsters United.
Absolutely. Well, folks, it's exciting times in the Teamsters right now. Like we said, keep your eye on this UPS freight contract battle right now. Keep hitting the ground and look out for a new episode of the Worker Power Hour this week. And continue to look out for some of these quick strike videos as developments happen. But with that, we want to wish all of our listeners union power.
Union power.